Hey everybody, Ralph Carrasco here with Transworld Business Advisors, and we are fortunate to have Paul Conrad in the house. Paul and I are licensed real estate salespeople with the state of California, and we both work at the Transworld office in Modesto, California. He's a really smart guy. We're fortunate to have some of his time today. We're going to be going over like the valuation process. Paul is really like the first step in all of this. He goes through with us to look over the financials, the P&L, the balance sheet, and he helps create these valuations so then that way we can see where you're at and how we can place you in the marketplace. We have a fiduciary duty to ensure that we're looking out for your best interests as well as the best interests of our buyers. So, Paul, thank you. Appreciate you taking some time to speak with me today.
Of course. Glad to do it. Glad to be here.
Yeah, man. This is going to be good times. So, you and I, we've seen each other, emails here and there. We really haven't had a chance to sit down and talk. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity for us to kind of just get a little bit more information about you. And, I'm always writing you emails like, what do you need, man? What do you need from me? Like, is this good? What makes this easier? Because we need to be able to go at a high rate of speed. So tell me tell me a little about you.
A little about me. I'm born and raised in Modesto. Spent the first 20 years of my life here. Ended up doing my undergrad at Arizona State, actually. Got my bachelor's in logistics management. Had some internships in the logistics space, realized it's probably not what I wanted to do career-wise, so made the pivot for my master's towards finance. Got my master's in finance from USC in Southern Cal.
Isn't that what's behind you?
That's right. We have the Coliseum behind me, the diploma above it.
There you go. Congrats, man.
Thank you. Swore up and down that I'd never move back to the Central Valley, and my dad's actually one of the managing partners here at Transworld. Asked me if I wanted to come up and help him build the company, and here we are. The rest is history. So I've been here coming on 3 years now in April. I really am on the backside of things, working in finance, valuations, like Ralph mentioned. But yeah, more operations focused. I'll step back in on the latter half of the deal with deal structure conversations as well, but more back end finance operations roles.
Nice. Yeah, that was one of the things that really intrigued me about how we do things. And I'm one of the newer members to the team. So it's a very unique model because most business brokers or, business advisors doing business sales, because in the state of California, you can't call yourself a broker unless you're a broker, right? DRE comes jumping down our throat. But a lot of times those individuals are having to do everything themselves, right?
Yeah, correct. So like you mentioned, we operate much differently than the vast majority of brokers where, as you alluded to, they're doing everything by themselves. I mean, what we saw when we started was we wanted individuals to be able to, if you're on the front end working with sellers and buyers, we wanted our agents to be able to focus on that. And then we wanted to set up a back office team, if you will, that can focus on their strengths. So mine, for example, I'm working on the financial side, the P&Ls. I'm also putting together the executive summaries. So, and we found that it does work somewhat better that way, right? Everybody's able to focus on their strengths. They know what they need to do. They know how to do it, and they're the specialists at what they do. So that was our intention when we set out doing this, and I think it's worked out well.
Yeah, it's been great, and like you said, like and even as one of our team members said, Ralph, you're great in the front. You got them all the way through. You're going to be great in the back. And he's like, that's not me. I'm the guy in the middle. Like, he's like, this is my sweet spot. I'm great right here. And that wasn't you. That was one of our other teammates. But he's like, I stay in my lane and I do what I do. And I expect you to do what you do.
Yep.
Okay, I got you. So, so one of the great things that, I realize about this, and one of the things that we do different is not every business is ready to go to market, right?
Yeah,
Not
100%. And
not every business is ready to turn in their P&Ls. And so, um, can can you talk about one of our first stages that we have, and then we'll kind of touch on P&Ls and balance sheets and all that. But like one of the first stages we have, and like what we look for when we're like even evaluating a business to see if we can help them get to market.
yeah, so I mean, especially to your point, some companies, especially in the times that we're in, right, we're
Yeah, it's
still
bad.
trying to get over COVID and all of that, and businesses are open, they're closed, and we're trying to
Yep.
get back to some sense of normalcy. So yeah, to your point, I mean, some just aren't ready to sell. They're whether it's because of COVID or you know other factors that are driving that.
Right.
Um, and what we're trying to see first and foremost is, and what a buyer is ultimately going to want to see is, is everything put together? How does the package look? Are these, do we have financials? Do we have a clear picture of, the last 3 to 5 years? How does that look? What is the, ever since we opened post COVID, since the business opened, how is that tracking, right? Is that looking
Yeah.
more like 2019, 2018? If not, what's the reason for that? So the first step in the process really is to get a good understanding of where's this business now, where's this business going to be in 6 months and 6 years, because
Right.
that's what a buyer is going to want to know. What am I buying here? I'm making a substantial investment into this existing company. So what really should I expect moving forward is what we're trying to understand at first glance, at a 30,000 foot view.
Right. Yeah. And then that's when, it's like my responsibility to make sure that, when someone even comes in and says, hey, I think I want to sell my business. Right. And this is kind of where uh, I'll inundate you with questions sometimes when I deliver my stuff, because we have to, as agents, let me back up just a little bit. Since for that, everybody, one of the reasons we have that process in place is that we don't charge any upfront fees. We don't get paid until the transaction or the deal has closed. Some other agents charge people upfront marketing fees, setup fees, all of that, right? And even and we're going to touch on this a bit more, but like even sometimes for the valuation that you're producing, Paul, it's a pretty in-depth valuation, right?
Yeah. So that's another thing, going back to why we're structured the way that we are. It allows individuals like myself and others that we do have in the back office who can focus on their strengths and really provide a product that is almost unparalleled by any other small business broker that you're going to find. So
Right.
that was the goal, and I think we do a pretty good job at providing that.
Yeah, no, they're great. They're beautiful. And to everyone and everybody listening and watching this, I've heard numerous stories, Paul, and I know you don't take compliments well. Um, but I've heard time and time again from, CPAs, and other individuals that people say, oh, I have this valuation, and then we produce ours. It's usually plus or minus, 5%. And it's pretty good. And so from that point, for us to even consider bringing a business to our proposal committee saying, hey, or do you think this looks good, we go through and we ask people some information about their business. But like you said, those 3 to 5 years of P&Ls and that balance sheet and those taxes, that helps us roll it in, so then that way we can even set up, because I know there's a form that you gave me. It was the SDE form, right? We look over that to look and see, okay, what's the seller's discretionary income at the end of the day? How does that look? And that gives us a pretty good indication before we go into the full blown valuation, right? Can you touch on that real quick?
Yeah, so that's the 30,000-foot view that I mentioned. We want to see, when we're looking at that, we want to see, what are the trends, how things look, from a high level. And COVID, as we mentioned, has kind of thrown everything amok. So
Right.
that's really an outlier year. But what we want to see is, what did the picture look like before that point in time? So from 2018, 2019, and where is it trending now? And
Right.
is that a good story to tell a buyer? If not, then we need to be able to understand it and explain it to a buyer, because they're going to have all of these questions, because what they're concerned with is, what can I expect when I do buy it? What cash flow am I going to be assuming when I make,
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars of investment into this company?
Right. And kind of to that point as well. And when I keep talking about me sending you questions or front filling, like, hey, I already asked this question, there's some things that get pulled out of the P&Ls, right? That possibly don't go to the bottom line. Are you able to touch on that real quick? Because you've been a great expert in showing me how to further look into this, and how much of this was discretionary versus the actual cost.
Yeah. So, and it's a challenging balancing act, I will say. Obviously, as a business owner, you're incentivized to reduce your taxable income, with
Just like Amazon, right? Because Amazon doesn't
exactly,
pay taxes. So I mean,
exactly.
one of the biggest companies in in the world doesn't pay taxes, and you're like,
Yeah.
what?
So there are naturally going to be expenses that a buyer inherently isn't going to assume. So that,
Right.
could be anything that it really isn't an operational expense. We're going to want to look at the P&L without those expenses.
Right,
And
like a truck payment, right? Or if there's an employee who's on salary who really, doesn't need to be on salary, and that role can be fulfilled by somebody they already have in place, or that can kind of go away, correct? As well as sometimes healthcare fees, right? Things
yeah,
like that.
so for every business, it's really going to be the current owner's compensation. One of the owner's compensation is going to be an add back, because the new buyer is going to assume that, and then any non-cash depreciation, amortization, interest payments, things along those lines are going to be added back. But to your point, in addition to that, if there is any non-operating expenses, like a truck that is typically used for personal use, or the owner's health insurance payments, that is going to be a benefit of the buyer when he assumes the business, those are going to be added back as well. And it can be as granular as, your personal cell phone that isn't necessary to operate the business. That could be an add back as well. So the goal and the intention is to identify the operational cash flow of the business, what a buyer is going to inherit, because that's all they're concerned with.
Right.
And a lot of times it does get convoluted, like I mentioned earlier, because we are trying to, as a business owner, you're trying to reduce that taxable income.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times in almost every business, we see these expenses, and we want to identify those early, just so we can call them out and get down to the true numbers.
Right, right. And that's the crazy part, right? So not only are you great with the numbers, you got that MBA, USC, one of the toughest schools to get through. You took it a step further, right? So from our standpoint, right, as the agent in the front, making sure everything's covered through the whole cycle, we're here for you no matter what agent you're working with. I mean, Paul, you've even done deals, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
Listing committee comes back, they say, you know what, we think that this is a good viable business, everything looks good, let's move forward with the full valuation then. I heard you went through some crazy stuff to get like this coveted valuation. So can you tell us about that? Because it's not just like a California thing, this is like a national thing, right? And it was pretty intense, which I know I wouldn't do it. I'd be like, all right, yo, I'm out. Like,
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah, so with that, it was also unfortunate timing. I started the process right after the COVID shutdown, so that really dragged
Oh,
it out. But what I ended up pursuing was to become a certified valuation analyst through NACVA, which stands for the National Association of Certified Valuators and Analysts. So like you mentioned, it is a national certification. And the reasoning behind it was.
And then just real quick, like, this isn't something you just like go, oh, you know what, I think I'm going to do this today, right? Like, you got to step up to the plate already, like proving your chops, right?
Yeah, it was quite a process. It took about a little over a year. Some of that was a delay because of COVID, but it
Right.
was a pretty strenuous process. The expectation was, you've already done valuation work, which I had.
Yeah.
My degree in finance helped as well. But the final project to get the certification was to essentially present a valuation of your own in front of their committee, which is peer reviewed, and they basically dissect it, cut it apart, and it went well for the most part. Obviously, I passed.
You nailed it.
So no issues there. But yeah, to your point, it did take some time. It took a lot of effort. I thought when I graduated from USC, I was done with school, but I was clearly wrong there.
Yeah. I I still sign up for courses, man. I'm,
it never ends.
Never ends. I love it. Like, on my previous call, it was like, the whole reason we're on this planet is to help each other, and be the best service if you just keep learning more and learning more and learning more, because
right.
You never know what you get into. So tell me how that goes, right? Okay, you get the P&Ls, you get the balance sheet. I submit my input to you. We go through our full like seller questionnaire, and I give you what nuggets that I can. How does that valuation process go for like a specific business, right? And just not in the weeds, but just, like, what is somebody expecting to know about it on the front end, and then like what should they expect that they're going to get on the back end? Because your stuff it's always top notch. So I think sometimes people are like, whoa, what is this? So if you can like, break it down for like that guy who's running his bakery and he needs to read this through.
So what I'm looking to do whenever I'm examining any business and presenting a valuation is, first and foremost, is identify any variances in revenues or bottom line cash flow. That's the first concern that we have. If there is a gap that's not COVID related, that's right. Almost any business is going to have a COVID blip. But say there's a different variance that we notice in a prior year, in 2018 revenue is down for whatever reason, we want to identify it, be able to explain it, because it does have an impact on the value, because that's what a buyer is going to be concerned with. And a lot of times it's going to, impact their confidence in the business moving forward. But
because you've seen stuff like that, right? Where, you have a down year in 18 and you talk to the people and they're like, yeah, we were going through some health stuff. We were going through some personal stuff. And then, we got our head right and get back up on the saddle and let's go.
Yep. And in cases like that, where it's a 1 year blip and there's a solid explanation and it makes sense, then there's normally not an impact there. But if, it's due to an operational, malfunction or just a miss operationally, then that certainly can have an impact. So that's really step one, is understanding those. And then the process from a high level glance, it's really what I'm doing is looking at the industry, what vertical are you operating in? If it's a manufacturing plant, I'm going to compare it to other manufacturing plants that have sold. And I'm going to, try to narrow that down by region, by time frame. So we want it to be, in the last 5 years, for example. We want to really narrow it in. We want to look at companies with similar revenues, similar cash flow. And we're saying, okay, if this business had 500,000 in cash flow, what did this sell for? We're really looking at comps. It's almost like a real estate transaction for the most part. We're looking at, if you're looking at real estate, what have similar homes in the same neighborhood, same size, sold for? And that's really what we're doing with businesses. What do similar businesses sell for? What is that multiple? And then it's applied to the company that we're looking at. So that could be similar revenues, cash flow, however you're looking at cash flow. It could be EBITDA, it could be seller's discretionary earnings, SDE, that we mentioned earlier.
Can you hit that one real quick? Right. So many people see that word and they're like, what's that? Right. EBITDA.
Yeah.
Right. So like, it's that coveted word that everyone loves to throw around, right? Like the smart people who have done this before, they're like, oh yes, what's the EBITDA on the business?
Yeah.
Bro.
So EBITDA is typically used for larger companies. Investors they really are concerned with EBITDA as opposed to SDE, because, for a larger business, we're not going to be adding back your cell phone payments or these small expenses. So we're really not concerned with SDE in the same way that we are for smaller businesses. So EBITDA is really just income, and we're adding back non-cash expenses and interest. And
okay, so what's like like if you break it, what is it, like earnings
before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization?
Perfect. Cool. EBITDA. There we go.
There we go. That's the finance 101 course for today.
Right. So everybody that had that question, like, what is like this EBITDA thing, right?
Yeah. So EBITDA is typically just minimal add backs, if you will. I'm using air quotes for that.
Right.
To get to that base level cash flow. And as I mentioned, it's really for larger companies with typically, if I had to define a range, is $1 million plus in cash flow is where investors are going to start looking at, okay, what's the EBITDA, not necessarily SDE.
Right. Got it. Okay. So then, so you do your wizardry, right? You make it look all beautiful. You get it dialed in. What is someone expecting to kind of see? What is your final product, entail and include?
Yeah. So what we're looking at for that final product is really just a range. It's okay. You can expect when you come to us and we find a buyer, we're expecting this business to sell from, A to B. And that's really a range from 500 to 600,000. And it really is just a recommendation. And as we said, it's backed by the data. So there's a reason why the range is what the range is. Not to say that it couldn't be higher than that range or lower than that range. It's going to depend on, every business is different and unique. So if there's, as we were mentioning earlier, if there's stuff that we just can't explain or was an operational mishap that a buyer is going to be concerned with, maybe it's going to fall below that range. We're assuming in that range, we're assuming the average business, or maybe there's, something extraordinary about the company that we are selling. They have, some sort of recently implemented competitive advantage that hasn't necessarily shown up through the financials. Maybe that adds value, for example. So it's really comparing this to the average company sold. This is the range we're expecting this business to fall into when we do sell it. So it's really just setting that expectation for our sellers of, what they can expect to receive on the back end of this transaction.
Okay. And so what about all those people that are out there saying that you should get 3 times gross for your business, or some of these other, 10 times gross of your business? On average, is there a range that we look at? I know that, over $1 million, and I know that there's so many different variables, but we've also learned that businesses selling for under the $1 million mark generally tend to have that 2, 3, maybe 4x if they have, like you said, that secret sauce or that something special. And
the range is what I see for using the ballpark of $1 million and under. What we typically see 95% of the time is really in that 2 to 3 times SDE range. Because a buyer is concerned with paying back either the loan or getting their investment back on that business, and they don't want it to take 7, 8, 10 years. That doesn't make sense from an investor standpoint. So what they're looking for is really 2 to 3 times cash flow, so I can pay this off in 3-4 years. That makes sense from an investor standpoint. So it really does come down to that 2 to 3 range for these smaller companies. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of variables that can play into that, but that's what we see for the vast majority
Right.
of companies.
Right. No, and it's good stuff. And so even for those individuals who are, considering, I mean, this is such a blue ocean for us, right? From the way I see it, because there's 35 million small businesses in the United States. And I know that the team identified this early, and why we chose, Transworld with their 40 years of experience. But there is such a huge opportunity. And from your experience, with the baby boomer generation and them owning so many businesses and starting so many businesses, there's a lot of people that don't know where to turn, right? And they don't have a succession plan. Are you able to share some of those numbers of like baby boomer generation business turnover? Have you guys looked at that?
Yeah, so I mean, especially now, that's the expectation, and that's why we were, so excited to get involved with Transworld. Is what we have seen, what we are going to see, especially with COVID, is a lot of business owners are either getting older or they're just tired. I think COVID was the straw that broke the camel's back for a lot of business owners.
A lot of people. I hear it all the time, right? People are just tired, man.
Yeah.
People are tired. They're just like, oh, like my lady and I, we talk about it because she's a business owner, and it's like we're waiting for everything to get grooving again so we can go and have a vacation.
Yeah.
Because we're tired.
Exactly. And that's what we see with the vast majority of these companies. They're just tired. They want to either gear towards retirement, they want to do something else less stressful, they just want out. So it is gratifying in that regard. I mean, being the matchmaker, allowing that to happen, and ultimately what we're trying to do is get them in a position where they're comfortable, they're happy, and I think for the most part we do a pretty good job of that.
Oh, I know we do. Because the other point is and why we're doing more of these and speaking with team members like yourself, is that there's in my opinion, a whole group of investors who didn't even know you can buy a business that's already generating revenue. Everyone wants to start something from scratch. And, that's one of my concepts that I tell people, I call it IID activity, right? Where the first I of I is imitate. Right? You buy a business, or you get a business, just don't touch it for 6 to 9 months. Leave it alone. Like, it's generating revenue. There is no reason for you to do anything, right? Like, you should be able to pay this off in 2 to 3 years. Like, just even if you just let it run the way it is, and then the second I is innovate, right? Then make your changes once you understand what's going on and where improvements need to be. You don't make a bunch of changes day one, and that turns into duplicate. So imitate, innovate, then duplicate. Because to Paul's point, if you can invest your money in a revenue generating vehicle and an asset, right? I mean, yeah, you probably bang your head about this more than anybody, I think, where people get so attached to their business, and you're like, it is an asset. Remember that it is an asset. It is not your baby. Everyone, you got somebody who spent 20 years growing this thing, and then, they get their valuation back and it's not as high as they were hoping it was going to be. Right. And then that turns into, well, how can we get it higher? Right. Or you help me on a deal, and the individual, you came back with your valuation, and the seller was like, nope, I want this price. And I was like, well, you better show well. You better look really nice.
Yeah.
And as we work through this process, the other cool part is that we can submit updated financials, right? Because to sell a business takes anywhere from 9 to 12 months, and that's the average, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So we are constantly, right? That's something that you ask for. right? Can you touch on that and why the importance of like getting those updated quarterlies are so helpful?
Yeah, especially given, and we've talked about it quite a bit, the times that we are in. What an investor is going to want to see is, how are the trends looking? How are we recovering from COVID? What does that look like? And I mean, it could be as frequently as a monthly basis. Hopefully it's a quarterly basis. We're looking at it every quarter. How are things trending? Are we getting back to pre-COVID numbers? If so, that's a great story to tell for any buyer. If not, what's going on and how do we get there? What does that picture look like? We need to be able to, you know, get this through and convince a buyer that this is the case and this is how they can get there if they acquire this company.
Right. Because the one thing I've learned is that it's kind of like pulling a thread, right? You don't want to have any loose threads because then you start pulling and the buyer's just going to pull and pull and pull. And then
Yeah.
they're like, oh, I'm done. I'm out. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yep.
And so, that's kind of a funny point. There's an average thrown around sometimes about like only 60% of businesses sell. Have you heard that?
Yeah. Yep. So, and I think what we try to do is really vet the hard questions up front. That way, we know what we're up against and we have answers, we have explanations to those questions, those concerns moving forward. Because I think that is what is going to kill the deal in later stages if it's not addressed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's important to identify, any potential issues early, whether it's, financial questions or concerns that a buyer may have, whether it's, a landlord transition, maybe that there's difficulty there. We see that quite a bit, that there's issue with, assuming a lease or getting another lease.
Freaking landlords.
Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with that. But any piece that is critical to especially obtaining financing, we're going to want to identify that and understand how we're going to bridge that gap when we do get to the point where we have somebody who's serious about buying this business.
Yeah. No, man, this has been fantastic information. So, Paul, thank you for your time.
Of course.
This has been super helpful. So anybody that's out there that just kind of watched this, if you would like to see if you qualify for a free valuation, utilizing our services, again, one of the things that differentiates our franchise location for Transworld is that we do operate in a horizontal manner instead of a vertical manner, meaning we have a whole team in place. We do our best to make sure that all communication is captured. We stay in high contact with our clients and we charge no upfront fees. So we ask a lot of questions. We do a lot of vetting. But if you're a service provider and you have a business, I'm sure that you want to ask as many questions as possible as well to make sure you get the best clients as possible. So this has been Ralph Carrasco with Transworld Business Advisors and my man,
Paul Conrad. Thanks for having me.
This is long game for us. Paul's a big baseball guy and we're going to create a dynasty, right? This isn't just us showing up like Bad News Bears. We're going to be doing this, right?
That's the expectation.
Yes, long game. So if we can be of service, please reach out to us. And we look forward to speaking with you. So thank you.
Thanks, Ralph.